Hello, and welcome to episode 11 of the IP3 podcast. I'm Kevin,
I'm Alex.
and today we're going to be talking about Prism again, but from a different angle than the last time that you and Rhea talked at length about your golden girl.
Yeah,
Today we're
because
going to talk, how do you beat Prism? How do you combat Prism?
Ray and I talked a couple weeks ago about how do you play Prism, and now that she's not here, we will talk about. Well, I will explain how to beat Prism. Which, funny enough, I think 2 weeks ago, the ProQuest season, she had a bunch of wins, like 15, 13, something like that. But then this past weekend, she had many less wins, which I think is people realizing, oh wait, people are gonna play Prism. I should um, pack some sideboard cards for it.
Pack your lead the charges, pack your time snap potions, pack your gambler's gloves. All those slots are worth it. It used to be like, oh, interesting. If Prism's ever good, maybe I'll bring some stuff for her. But turns out she's good, so you probably should bring those cards.
It was funny. I played Matt Rogers at the Pro Tour, and he was playing KO, and then he ended up running Apex Bonebreaker, and then I just saw a stream of one of the I think Card Merchant ProQuest, and he was in the finals against Prism playing Gambler's Gloves.
Yeah,
So that was
certainly
funny.
certainly didn't decide on that from your match though, if I
Yeah,
recall
definitely not.
correctly.
Yeah, no, but
Uh, but before we dive fully into tonight's main topic, there's some cool new cards, some new spoilers, and then a bit of cool news for our missing IP member. In that, first and foremost, coolest thing ever. Rhea is getting a spoiler card scheduled for May 13th, which is just dope, and she is over the moon, pun intended, to have a spoiler card to spoil for this set. And LSS instantly created an Enigma lifer. She's just not gonna play anything that's not Enigma for the next X amount of years till that hero has LL'd, or who knows, come what may. But she's
I,
stoked, and it's gonna be pretty cool.
I almost got her on the Riptide train. Almost. We were
Almost,
close.
it almost happened. It was she was buying in. She was like, "Oh, interesting. This hero disrupts their opponent like at instant reaction speed on their own turn, and otherwise just plays this like really efficient, aggressive game plan. Okay, cool. And then spoiler news dropped and out the window. So sorry, Riptide. Maybe next time.
Speaking of Riptide, though,
Speaking of Riptide,
we got a couple expansion slot uh, spoiled, I guess. Uh, so Riptide has a new specialization, Murky Water. Cost 2, it's a red card. Uh, Attacks for 6, blocks for 3. It's an arrow. Uh, if and it says if this has an aim counter, it gets +1 and dominate. And then separate text, when this hits, you may banish face down 3 traps from your graveyard. If you do, choose one at random and put it into your arsenal. This card is crazy.
so
I was
similar to Endless Arrow being a snatch clone that just always draws you an Endless Arrow when it hits, this is a 2 for 6 snatch that draws you a
always
trap when
puts a
it
defense
hits.
reaction in arsenal.
Yeah.
And
Um,
if it happens to be one of the like legendary traps, if you get to play 4 of those in a game,
I that
oh
is
mama.
where this card scares me like nobody's business, right? Like Riptide getting a good offensive way to close out a game, tremendous addition to his toolkit. That was always a big obstacle for him. And even the on hit is cool. I am a little scared though, because I don't want to get collapsing trapped 4 times in a game. It sounds like a
Oh,
game I'm losing.
we can dream. Yeah, but like you just said, I, something that has been holding me back from playing more Riptide has been I feel like if my opponent doesn't play into my traps, I have a hard time closing out games. But with Murky Water now, like Riptide having access to a card with Dominate, in addition to the new Ranger equipment that we got spoiled, it's an arm piece, long draw, half glove. Instant destroy this. Put two cards from your hand and or arsenal on the bottom of your deck. Your next air attack this turn gets +4 and has battle worn 1. So now combining long draw, half glove, and murky water, now you've just got 11 dominate to end the game with as Riptide. And if it doesn't, then your opponent's probably going to be low, and now you've got a trap in your arsenal.
Yeah,
Uh, I'm
I'm
excited.
gonna rat out Rhea for a second, and like Rhea's initial reaction to this card was, oh, this just kind of looks like hot garbage. She was very unimpressed initially. Uh, I think since then, thinking about its potential uses, it's definitely grown on all of us somewhat. But I mean, the easy like level one use case for this is, oh, okay, so you hit me with a, if you're playing, I mean, Riptide or Azalea or any ranger that's relying on buffs into arrows, Warmonger's Diplomacy is a huge uh, obstacle because you can't do both, right? So you're either locked into, I guess I'll fire an arrow and do nothing else, or the worst case scenario was when you started the turn with a non-attack action buff in your arsenal, and your turn is just actual nothing because you can either activate your bow to replace it, and yeah, it's just devastating. But long draw half glove is, it's a bit of a get out of jail free card, at least for the first Warmongers, which I think will be a welcome addition to the Ranger arsenal. Also pun intended.
All
uh,
right, Shadow Man. What we got for the Shadow cards?
oh, the shadow spice was flowing. Um, so during Battle Hardened Valencia, they spoiled a pair of new shadow attack actions. Well, one was Shadow Brute, one was Shadow Rune Blade. So we'll start with Shadow Brute, which was Shadow Realm Horror, which is a red 2 cost 6 power attack, 3 block, that says as an additional cost to play this, banish 3 cards in your graveyard. If one of those cards has 6 or more power, this gets +1 attack. If two of those cards have 6 or more power, this gets go again. If 3 or more, you may play a card banished this way this turn. So, as Levia, you are, you can, obviously, you miss occasionally, but the average floor of this card is, I just blanked on the name of it. There's another attack that's a two cost
Red
7.
Screamer.
No, that's
Oh,
the
Nocturne.
that's the go again. Um,
Yeah.
I'm blanking on it. There's a Blood Debt one that's like banish 3 cards. It's a 2 for 7, and that's it. And that's a card that Levia players have played before, and sometimes still do in some number. Um, so Shadow Realm Horror is a massive upgrade in that slot, and it gives Levia another power card, which, like, obviously Blood Archbella with the claws is crazy. There's 1 for 6s that, go really nicely with Art of War and the go again from that, which was really strong. Um, Slithering Shadowpede out of Dusk Till Dawn, incredibly powerful, particularly potent with Art of War. Now also particularly potent with Shadow Realm Horror. Um, it's it's not going to be the most consistent thing, and honestly, I feel like, Levia sort of gets forced into playing enough non-sixes that, um, you know you should plan your turn around it hitting 1 or 2 most of the time. Probably 2 more often than not. Um,
The feeling of it, though, being able to, assuming you have like a Gravel and Growl in your graveyard, just being able to go 7 go again into a 1 cost Gravel and Growl for 7 more from your banish zone that you just banished. A nice 2 card 14.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
the ceiling on it is unreal, and it's you know Levia already had some of the best 2 and 3 card hands value wise. Obviously, with you have to jump through the hoops for it, but the raw attack numbers were there, and this is just more of the same. Um, I mean, and imagine Horror of the Shadow Realm on a Blood Rush Bellow turn, right? If Levi gets to be like, cool, have my fridge this turn. I'm coming in with a 5 card hand, Blood Rush Bellow, Claw, Shadow Realm Horror, hit everything, don't miss into Shadowpede. That's a casual 27.
Even if Levi is running the new brute chest equipment that reduces the costs
Savage
of all your
Sesh.
power attacks, yeah, that could also make this card go crazy. Like do a nice uh, Art of War, like a Shadowpede or something. Yeah, like the upside is crazy.
Yeah, the
Downside is
upside
a
is
2 for 7.
definitely cool. Right, yeah, no, the fail state of that card is still just completely acceptable, which is probably the scariest part about it. Um, it this is a card that I don't know. At a different point in Fab history, I would almost be surprised that this card can block for how good it is offensively. I'm a little surprised
Yeah,
that it can block, but um,
I'm okay
yeah,
with
I
it.
don't know. It's cool. No, I think it's a fun card. It's a neat card. Expect to see a lot of it if you're playing any Levia. So,
Also,
um,
side note, Kevin, there's an eclipse in the background of the art, so
oh my gosh, I hadn't even noticed. That's actually really funny. How on brand.
yeah.
Uh, and then last but certainly not least, we have the Shadow Rune Blade attack action called Eloquent Eulogy, which is a uh, red pitch 1 cost attack action with 4 power. It blocks for 3. It has Runegate 1, which is the first time that has existed. So that's even if this card was vanilla Runegate 1, that would be cause to celebrate, which just tells you all you need to know about it, because that's not all the text on this card. Uh, it also says when the combat chain closes, if a hero has lost life this turn, create an eloquence token. So when
It also has blood debt, but
also has blood debt,
don't they all?
of course, they all do. That's nothing special. Um, Also phenomenal art, which is pretty cool. Um, but Eloquent Eulogy is gonna. It feels a very I don't know a good. It's a really good synergy piece. It's not single-handedly gonna break the deck in half. It's gonna do sort of like a deck slot compression where something can it's simultaneously a payoff and facilitator of like multiple gates in a turns, and also feeds your future turns with the reward being that eloquence token. Eloquence, for those at home, is a token not unlike a Quicken token, except it gives the next non-attack action you play go again. Um, Not relevant for all of the attacks that Vincent is playing. It's actually probably redundant into about a dozen of them, right? All the Mavrian Skies and Shadow Puppetries. But there's a few that it can sort of I don't know. It just makes them better at what they're already doing. Um, Turns out read the runes with Go again, very strong. Basically makes it another copy, like more copies of Revel and Runeblood. Um, Funeral Moon card was already not glue, but like an important role player, and now it's even better because what me and a lot of other Runeblade players have wanted for a long time is a okay, cool, give me a 0 cost non-attack action with Go again that like makes a rune chant to help me in a pinch hit those thresholds where I don't necessarily have to pitch. And now, you know, Eloquent Eulogy sort of allows you to do that with several cards you were already playing. So, um, and then
So
just the
you and I
fact.
have talked. Sorry, you and I have talked about like Vincent specifically on how the dream is to like have a setup turn and then double gate, and then have a setup turn and then double gate. I feel like this card it says that we're on the right track because I feel like this is what it's perfect for. Like this is perfect for a double gate turn, and then it gives you an eloquence token to like have a setup turn the following turn. And the fact it costs one, you only need one reenchant, meaning that you could just pitch a blue into grasp, and now you've got one floating for either like an Art of War or a envelop or other one cost buffs. You can start running come to fight, sure. You're not gonna do that,
Probably not
but
going to run come to fight.
the being able to from nothing play this out of your banish zone just by having a card to pitch into grasp though is something.
Yeah, no, there's it adds just so much flexibility to your turn cycles. And even if we're just looking for cards to compare it to or what it might take the place of in deck lists, tons of people had been playing red Bounding Demagon. This card is easier to play than that because you don't have to have a non-attack action to play it out in the first place. So it can just be a one card, 1 and 4 damage on a turn for Vincent, right? Those are a pair of breakpoints, and if either one of those connects, you're getting your Eloquence token, which is huge. Um, or even just other, bread and butter turns with, Mavskai's attack into flail. I've done that play with Bounding Demagon plenty of times, and this just makes it that much stronger, right? You're still threatening all the same amount of damage, and Eloquent Eulogy doesn't care who loses life. So if you go again into flail, you are getting your Eloquence token, no doubt about it. Ripple Away might have something to say about it, but that's about the only way that it can be prevented.
So Vincent's gonna run this for sure. Are you gonna play this in Living Legend Chain?
I thought about it initially. I was like, "Oh, definitely. This seems really cool, really good." I don't regular chain. No, I don't think so. I don't think the value is there, even though you can pitch into grasp like a two cost 5 damage turn isn't quite worth it unless you're bringing in like you don't have a reason to want eloquence as a payoff because you run Seeds of Agony and a ton of things that their whole purpose is to have go again and give go again. So just at least not in the classic build. For the builds of chain that are uh, rune gating people, which definitely exist and are crazy fun, I don't think they're quite as competitive as the original brew. Um, but it absolutely slots into that other version. So lots of fun to be had there. It's a big upgrade for the RuneGate chain deck.
Very cool. Shall we get into it?
We shall. Tell me how to beat up frail blonde librarians with wings.
I don't know if I can legally do that.
That's fair.
Um, all right. So the very first thing you need to know about playing against Prism, beating Prism, is you need to know what Prism's plan into you is, and you'll be able to tell that as soon as they flip over their equipment. Because either they'll be playing Imperial Rapture, which means that they're going to play a lot of Heralds and try to flip Angels for free and just attack you because if they're running that plan, you probably don't have a lot of poppers. Or if you do, Guardian, for example, they're going to run Vestiges of Soul, which is going to end up being the flood plan that Ray and I talked about. Shout out to the comments for giving us the the flood plan nomenclature, because I just didn't like calling it a combo deck. I don't know, but either way, Prism's gonna run this into decks that block really well or have a lot of poppers or both. And then another one is uh, we saw Oliver. Uh, did he? Yeah, he won that event with an Iris switchboard. So instead of having the Vestige Flood plan, I actually think he's still running Vestige, but he's running Iris of Reality to play the blue auras and attack for 4 with Go Again and grind out high popper decks like that. So that's the very first thing is check what equipment the Prism player is playing, and it'll let you know what their goals are before anybody even takes a turn.
So
All right.
so the baseline there then, right? So if they don't have a ton of poppers, Rapture, they're coming at you with a lot of heralds. Makes perfect sense. What makes what would drive a Prism player to run the classic Vestige Flood plan versus trying to do the Switchboard and Iris of Reality?
So we'll go through each hero real quick, but um, I say real quick, it'll probably be the whole episode. But basically, uh, if Prism thinks that her heralds are going to hit, the on hits of those heralds getting figments, whatever effect that happens, and then being able to flip and attack with the angel as well, is just such an incredible value that you only need to like hit and flip twice in the game to make up your 32 life, 40 life deficit. Um, so that would be why. I personally prefer playing the Herald plan. I feel like it's more dynamic and it's not my opponent's trying to kill me before I get my flood and me trying to survive until I get to the flood. So,
Right. So I
uh,
guess how is what makes the Iris plan so different from the Flood plan?
I have not played Oliver's list, so I can't tell you exactly, but just knowing from playing Iris and previous versions of Prism, um, the Iris plant is going to be more. All the blue cost auras cost 0, or the blue auras cost 0. You're able to block and then just play one, and then it asks your opponent the question of, are you going to take your turn to clear this aura, or are you going to take this turn to attack me? And then at that point, depending on what they do, changes how you can play your hand. Because they're still running a lot of the combo pieces, but instead of trying to get the incremental value of all the yellow auras just turn after turn, and you having to take a bunch of time to clearing them, they're able to play a proactive plan of like, I'm gonna play a couple auras, and then you have to take turns to clear them. But as you're doing that, I'm also chipping you for 4 every turn, and every time I have an aura out.
Gotcha. Okay. Um,
So when Prism is playing the Rapture plan, the each hero is going to be a little different because everybody has like different armor suites, different cards that they like to run. But when Prism is playing Rapture, they're trying to get their heralds to hit. If their first herald hits, it opens up so many doors and options because they can go get any figment they want and then be able to attack with Angel and then also end with another herald. And now they've just attacked you for 4 with the Angel and then also have Ward 4. So I think even though it's not good value, I think the best way to slow down that plan is to always just block the first herald. Because now Prism's options are extremely limited. Likely that they're just going to send another herald after that. But since the second herald doesn't have go again from Angel's Glow, that'll just be the end of their turn. They'll get a figment out and maybe they'll flip it, but it won't be attacking you, and then you get to choose how you're gonna deal with that.
okay.
Also,
Yeah.
Prism's
Block
only
the
running
first
about
herald.
yeah, only usually running about 9 red cards. So as much as it feels bad to block with your whole hand against Prism, sometimes just stalling her out and making her use reds, and even just like using D-Rex into their 2 for 7s, just so they don't hit, is like totally reasonable.
So is the deck fatigable then? I guess if you're a deck that is, you know, coming in with a good amount of defense reactions and a solid armor suite, is just blocking it out potentially good enough?
Potentially, it depends on um, honestly, it depends on the quality of the Prism player, I would say.
Okay.
If they notice that you are just like blocking a ton and not letting anything hit, they're instead of just throwing two heralds a turn, they're gonna set up like much bigger things with like Herald of Erudition. Try to get a Pierce Reality in play, the blue aura that gives +2 to your first Herald, um, which is another point. The Rapture plan is going to play three of those. At least I think it. I think it should. Um, that is a must kill. That is the scariest aura. People don't. The amount of times that I have as Prism blocked my hand, except for Pierce, just played it and then sent the turn back to my opponent, and they just keep attacking me. That is how I have won a lot of games. Because instead of throwing a two card 7, now you're throwing a two card 9, which is significantly harder to block 9 than 7.
Yeah, two card 9 with its a Herald of Triumph or something like that is devastating.
And
Historically,
if I ever get
it's been more like, oh, Passing Mirage is the problem one, the one that you have to get rid of. But it's interesting that that has evened out somewhat.
Yeah, I think Dromai has conditioned people to, oh, passing mirage. Oh, I need to kill that. Like kill passing mirage and mirror guy, and I can pop the rest of them. Where Prism, it's Pierce Reality is uh, much scarier. If you can ever stick two of those as Prism, you are ecstatic. um, so the Vestige plan, though, uh, what you're gonna need to overcome that is apply as much pressure as you can before the flood turn, and then once the flood turn occurs, ideally you are able to kill Arclight Sentinel and uh, the
Soraya.
yeah Archangel Soraya in the same turn. So, for example, we'll talk about this later, but talking to my buddy who's playing Victor, I was like, the scariest loadout you can run is Balance of Justice, Time Skippers, no rune gloves. I don't care what the chest piece is, and two hammers, two Titan's fists. Because that means when I have my flood turn, all it takes for you is to have three blues. And if for some reason you only have two, Balance of Justice lets you search one more card, and Guardians have so many blues. As soon as you have three of them, skippers, hammer, hammer, and all all the setup that Prism has done is cleared in one turn. At that point, you should be able to keep up and apply more pressure back.
So is that counterplay? Have you found it to be, I guess, consistent enough that people who know that plan are you just struggling to overcome it at all?
I've not honestly I haven't played a ton since the Pro Tour because I've been super busy. So I haven't. I'm just this is more theory and what I don't want to see as Prism. But Max, the guy I was talking to about it, said that it worked for him. He started just to run that into opposing prisms and hadn't had any issues since then.
Huh.
Another thing that can happen with the Vestige plan is I'm sure everybody has heard the the throes of the community complaining about the Arclight Sentinel loop. Um, if you're able to just kill Avalon at any point, then you are not able to be looped anymore. So if you're under the loop but have the balance of justice, time skippers, two hammers plan, or you have the extra action points from a time snap or whatever, kill Arclight Sentinel because you have to, and then kill the Archangel of Rebirth. And at that point, you should be able to get back into the game.
All right. Well, there you have it. Kill ALS, kill Avalon, kill Soraya. Done. We did it. Solved it.
Yeah.
Uh, so I guess more specifically, then, how does it play out? So I'm Arachne. I'm Missouri. I'm an assassin. Where do I wisely invest my silver if I'm trying to, you know, get the better of a Prism Awakener of Soul?
If you're Arachne, I think it's actually the Mask of Perdition, which is funny to say
Hmm.
because it, the thing that Prism is scared the most about Arachne is because we don't block very well, honestly. All your 0 for 4s and daggers for 1, we hate seeing. So the thing we're scared of the most is you banishing our figments off the top of our deck. So if you're able to banish more with Mask Perdition, it's
Oh, eradicate. Just get eradicated.
yeah, yeah. Well, there's no chance I'm letting that hit. So
That's fair. I mean, you say that, and then you look at a hand, and you're like, "Oh, there's 3 no blocks here. Uh oh."
yeah. So I think that Arachne, I think Prisms can play either plan, the Rapture or Vestige. I think if it's Rapture, you just have to block the Heralds heavy, even if you don't have poppers. I think people are conditioned from Dromai to, oh, if I can't pop the first dragon, then I might as well just send all my damage back. But Prism doesn't have the infinite attacks that Dromai did, where it's just like Ashwing, Dragon, 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 Ashwing if you don't pop the first one. Where even if you just block the first Herald, the most that they can do with the rest of their turn is just attack with another Herald without go again. So the
Don't be
yeah.
afraid to block. Don't be afraid to block the
Yeah,
heralds like normal attacks. Just because you're not popping them, you're still getting good value off of keeping the figments from hitting play.
yeah. And even if you have like an okay turn to throw back at the Prism, just block first Herald, and you can let the second one hit if you like have a offensive turn to. But like I said, if the first Herald hits, it just opens so many doors for Prism. They have so many options. Like I said before, if you see Pierce Reality, kill it. um, and then as the assassin, you can also, as Prism, play the Vestige plan. I think I just like playing Rapture more, but some people may prefer the Vestige plan into the assassins. So if they do that, they're gonna run like the fat stack, just like all their cards into you, so that the odds of banishing figments, especially your important figments and important auras, are lower. Um, and then for either plan, if there are angels out, attacking with your daggers is really awkward because we don't want to absorb 1 damage off our ward 4, but we also can't block it with footsteps because piercing. So are we really going to give up a whole card to block a dagger? Hard to say.
Interesting. Yeah, no. Hearing you talk through that matchup, I would say like historically, I would have just assumed that assassins would be a complete a complete dog to the illusionist, just based on past illusionists. But it sounds like there's definitely a bit more play to that matchup than you might assume at first glance.
Yeah. I think people who play assassins play a lot of assassins, so I've
Yeah.
not played a lot of assassins, so uh, I'm sure people have
Yeah. Is there
more
anything?
lines I'm not thinking about.
Gotcha.
Yep. Go ahead.
Is there anything different about the way Uzuri needs to approach that matchup?
Um, is there you do have more poppers? Just be scared of the uh, Halo going to get Figment of Triumph to like cancel your pop because I don't think is there around any 7 powers? I don't think so.
Probably not normally.
So I think it's very similar where you need to apply as much pressure as you can while still blocking. Easier said than done, but
Gotcha.
honestly don't have a lot of reps into Uzuri, so
Fair. Yeah, no, that wasn't projected to be a huge factor in PT prep, so that's very reasonable.
yeah.
Um, all right, so moving to a more classically challenging class of heroes for illusionists, talking about brutes. Obviously, scab skins play a big part, and I know it can play out differently depending on whether you're facing KO, Leviah, or Rhinar. Uh, But let's start with KO, which is probably the most commonly faced opponent for ProQuest players. Uh, what's the usual approach there, and how do you feel about each of those matchups?
So I think the most likely approach is probably the Vestige plan, forcing you to roll Scabskin leathers, and I'm going to run Gambler's Gloves. So hopefully uh, I get a favorable die roll on the first or second try. But I have seen some Prisms that are playing Rapture and doing the Herald plan. If you are playing KO and your Prism opponent flips over Empyrean Rapture, just watch out for the Celestial Reprimands because if they're running Rapture, that means that they are confident that their heralds are going to hit. So block with your swing bigs and your red agile windups and like your 7 powers, so that 7 and 8s, so that if they do reprimand, it's possible that you could still end up popping. And it's also reasonable, depending on the game state, to block with 2 cards and threaten the pop,
Mm-hmm.
so that if they do reprimand it, you're still blocking most or all of it. Um, but if they don't, then they lose their action point. So
Yeah, I think that's a underutilized tactic on average. Uh, putting 2 cards in front. Uh, you're at that point. You're saying, okay, this second card is my insurance that even if you have something tricky here, you're you're still not actually landing this hit right with your yellow Herald of Triumph. Um, but no, you still need to sink the resource in to get your action point back to do anything else.
yeah. So what I think is probably more likely is they'll play the Vestige plan. So the way you're gonna go about playing that matchup is you're gonna apply as much pressure as you can before their flood turn, like using armor to block early, using Scowling Fleshbag to deny the second Herald attack. Um, and then once they flood, you're probably gonna have to roll Scabskin leathers. So if you're worried about that roll, I had a couple KO opponents that were so scared about rolling a one that they just didn't roll, and I was perfectly happy with that as well.
That's turns
So
out that's
I
probably
think
more wrong.
I think you just roll, and if you are worried about the roll, then you can run your own Gambler's Gloves, which is going to hurt because then you lose armor off of Apex. But
Well,
it's
the interesting thing that's this is a neat part of when I've been thinking through the Savage Sash use cases in KO recently. And I think the Prism matchup is a perfect example of a match where you want Savage Sash over Tunic. So you sort of maintain the amount of armor that you have for blocking heralds. It plays into the fact that you are trying to get downhill aggression as early as possible, and still leaves you a space for Gambler's Gloves to try and make sure that you don't just lose on the spot to the flood turn.
yeah, that is good. Uh, so the other brutes, real quick, we'll run over. Levia is very similar, although it's a bit harder for Prism because where KO is running 5, 6s, and a couple 8s, Levia's got a lot of 6s, 7s, and 8s to be blocking with. But it's kind of a similar plan where you're going to apply pressure as early as you can and then probably have to roll Scabskins to get out of the ALS uh, when that comes down. Reinar is all the things I just talked about, but even worse, I think Reinhardt's one of Prism's worst matchups because Intimidate's really good versus Prism because Prism wants to block with very specific cards, and she can get caught with no blocks or auras in hand after the Intimidate. Intimidate's tough. Moving on to the Guardians. I
Yeah,
think
moving from illusionist natural predator to their prey.
yeah. I think Vestige is the way to go. I can't see anybody playing Rapture into the Guardians because they've got such big attacks. It's hard to get your Heralds to hit. Um, but it's kind of the same thing. You want to apply as much pressure as possible before the flood. There's a ton of no blocks in the deck with all the figments and the auras. And then also, depending on how hot your deck is running, will determine if you even take turns to like spend attacks on killing auras like passing and pierce and merciful. Because sometimes you can just kill Prism before they get the value in off of those. But if your deck's running a bit colder, you may need to take the time to kill them and make sure that they don't get a bunch of value off them. I think, like I said earlier, the setup that I'm probably scared of the most as Guardian would be Balance Justice, Time Skippers, two Titans Fists, so that you can clear ALS and Soraya on the third turn. But it's very possible for I had a Bravo opponent just like 11 dominate. I was like, oh, okay. I will block with this card, discard these, play a Passing Mirage. And they go, okay, 8 dominate the next turn. It's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll block with a card and like play this Pierce Reality. And then they go, okay, 9 dominate. I'm like, I'm getting kind of low on life here, I guess. Okay, I'll block with a card and play Merciful Retribution, and then 11 Dominate. It's like, oh, I am dead. I can't do anything.
Both teams played hard.
Yeah.
So kind of similar to when Dramai was still around. Do you think that Bravo having access to dominate more so than the other Guardians, do you think that gives him a leg up, since it seems like aggression is just the way that they can take you down?
Yeah, Bravo could say, even though you have 3 blocks in your hand, I don't care. You're still only gonna block with 1 card. Where the other Guardians, like it's possible, like Victor attacks with a Golden Sun for 9 or whatever. Um, and Prism can just say, "Oh, I've got all these heralds. I'll just put 9 in front of it, and we just reset, and I'm 3 cards closer to my flood plan."
Makes sense. So I guess the one follow-up question I have about that is because I know that there are many, many Bravo players out there who have PTSD from Prism the first time around, and pretty justifiably so. But when it comes to activating Bravo and dominating attacks, obviously it's not necessarily going to happen every turn, but is it something that they just have to kind of just have to do and have to take the risk in the face of ALS, where they can't afford to not be trying to dominate?
Um, Maybe I don't think you need to. Like throwing big attacks is throwing big attacks, and sometimes Prism can't block them anyways, so dominate doesn't matter. Um, but also if Prism is gonna play an Arclight Sentinel just to like stop a dominated attack at her face, like Bravo is good with that because as Prism, I'm trying to get that in my arsenal and wait for another flood piece to then like go off. If I'm using 3 cards of my 4 in hand to like prevent an attack, that means that Bravo is probably already in a good spot. So
Okay, that makes sense. All right, we'll go to a class that has an interesting sliding scale of difficulty into Prism in Mechanologist. On one end of the spectrum, you have Teklevasen, gonna struggle most of the time to deal with Prism. Not, it's not the worst dog a hero has ever been into a illusionist, but it's pretty rough from my understanding. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we've got the mechs that are all okay with playing high octane.
yeah, uh, it's it's tough for Prism to try to do the Vestige plan into any of the mechs except for Teklevasen. Because the rest of them are, like you said, running high octane and have Achilles Accelerator usually. So, like for Dash IO, Prism's going to end up running Empyrean Rapture. And you do, as Dash, have some poppers to take the tempo. like Max Velocity and Big Bertha. I don't think Dash I
Now,
was
Big
running Big
Bertha's just a
Bertha, but
6.
Throttle. There you go. That's the one I was looking for.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, um, so yeah, Dash IO is got turns that you can take tempo with the poppers and still have good aggressive turns. But like I said earlier, block first Herald if you can, armor or um, like popping it or just like throwing some cards at it, which is sometimes challenging for Dash IO because you've got no blocks in the deck, so I can make it tough. Um, and then Prism only has 32 health, so probably two high octane turns, assuming that you've been playing your items and have a good amount of counters on the pistol, is gonna be tough for Prism. But for Dash IE, the OG, uh, Prism's not gonna know if you are Slab, which is a bit less popular than it used to be, or the boost version. So they have to hedge for the boost plan because if we try to play Vestige into uh, Dash when she's trying to boost, it's not going to be pretty because we then have so many no blocks. Um, just like Dash IO, you've got poppers to take the tempo, block the first herald. Uh, yeah, and then Max is the same as the above, but you've got the mech suit endgame that Prism can't block very well. Um, so I've been able to just kind of race Max. Luckily, I think I think the game I played into Ken, he boosted both of his or two of his three construct mechanoid, and the last one was like the bottom half of his deck. So I got kind of lucky there. But and then for Teklevossen, Prism's going to run the Vestige plan because Teklevossen does not go very fast, and it's kind of just a race between Singularity and the Flood turn. Uh, I think Teklevossen should probably be playing Pistol instead of Leveler into this match, so that way you can leverage your extra action points off of the legs or time snap potions if you're playing those. Um, you can kill multiple auras if you need to, um, and get Singularity and all your evos out as quick as possible. Luckily, you have a lot of armor, so blocking heralds is easier.
Yeah, makes sense. So really, so then for Czechoslovakia, it really is kind of singularity or bust in terms of overcoming, at least in most games.
I think so. I think that's the plan that most Teklevossens are like. Their whole deck is geared towards. So like they don't have a ton of like they can't go four wide with boost cards usually. Usually it's like they're running D-Rex and maybe a couple blue boost cards or maybe um, like the 3 for 7s that we got out of Bright Lights. Um, but they're not gonna uh, attack Prism's life total super quick.
Okay, makes sense. Uh, how about some ninjas? Fi and Katsu. Now, those were historically Dromai heroes that would prey on Dromai in general, not always, but how do they fare into Prism?
Talk about flying Katsu. I love the game interactions that ends up happening with Prism versus both the ninjas. Because Prism's gonna run Rapture. Um, so with Fi, you're not gonna be able to consistently block the first Herald like you've been hearing me preach. So you're gonna need to race the Heralds. But you do have significant armor to block Herald of Eruditions, because that is how Prism is going to be able to outrace you if they're able to go like block with some cards, Erudition, Angel, another Herald. is going to be how they're going to end up beating you. So if you can hold your 2 block armor pieces to give a card and armor to the Herald of Erudition, that's going to be the way you want to go. Interestingly, until Halo of Illumination is used, you don't want to break Mask of the Pouncing Lynx because they're just going to take that Salt the Wound or that Lava Burst and just use the Figment of Judgment to flip it over, and you're not going to be able to get to play it. So you're going to lose out on 2 armor off the headpiece, and then you're also just going to lose a card, lose some damage.
Right. At least
Um,
6 damage, and then also you're still just grabbing a, a 4 block and putting it in play.
Honestly, you could play either Mask. I think I am more scared of Mask Momentum in Phi because there's just a bunch of like 3 go again, 1 go again, 3 go again, 4 go again. And it's hard for Prism to like block all the like multiple mass triggers and still be able to like keep up with the race. But also, if you're running Pouncing Links, then the Prism is gonna kind of hold on to their Halo and wait for you to use it. So it's kind of like a cat and mouse game, like who's
Hmm.
gonna who's gonna break their headpiece first.
Interesting.
Uh, and then Katsu is uh, similar, but doesn't have the 2 block armor pieces like Phi does, the Shuko and the Furnace. So you're gonna have to once again race. But luckily for you, you've got much more awkward breakpoints for Prism, like attacking for 5 or 4 and maybe 1 more, like with breaking skills.
Hmm.
And then you've also got the potential as Katsu just to, oh look, I just drew triple bonds and Prism is dead because she only has 32 health. Um, it's the same thing with the Halo of Illumination pouncing links as Phi. Um, although you've got uh, Katsu's ability as well to kind of try to bait Prism into using her Halo. Because I'm going to try to save my Halo for when you're going to try to double bonds me and flip over there so it's just a single. I won't take as much damage. But you could try to fake them out this turn and then try to set up double bonds the following turn or be able to have your pouncing links later.
Yeah, definitely sounds like a challenging but interesting mini game within the game. Is the battle of those helmets. So in general, so I know that I know you tested into Katsu for the PT. Was that a matchup that you generally felt comfortable to favorite in, or did you feel like that one was, um, one you were more likely to lose than not?
Um, I did practice a ton into it, so I had a lot of the like little interactions parsed out. It definitely the more your opponent knows the Prism deck, the harder it is. Like I've played against Katsu who they haven't played against Prism before, and I was not under threat at all during the game. And then you play against Katsu who's played versus Prism, knows what they're trying to do, and it becomes much harder because now you both have the same information. But I enjoyed playing against Katsu.
Okay, cool. Uh, back back in the vicinity of historically bad matchups into illusionists, we have the Rangers, Azalea and Riptide.
Right. So Azalea, the Prism's going to run Imperial Rapture. Just like the ninjas, you're not going to be able to block the heralds very well. So my advice of blocking the first herald's not going to do great. So you got to try to treat it a bit like Drumeye, where you need to be applying pressure with your on hits instead of blocking, which Prism doesn't block very well. Uh, so it turns out Drumeye could most of the time just like block 12 on an arrow for 12, but oftentimes Prism can't do that. Um, now, I would say ignore all the auras with the exception of ALS because you have to attack it, and Pierce Reality. I think if I think Azalea ignores all auras with the exception of Pierce Reality. I think it's worth. Um, I think that's one that's worth attacking. I honestly don't think that in Azalea it's worth diluting the power of your deck to just add poppers. I think it probably just doesn't. I think it probably just doesn't get you enough points, and the game's going to be super quick that you may not even see them, or you see them like, oh, I need a zero cost arrow on top, and like I'm set, and then it ends up being a battering bolt, and you can't play it now. If you are going to add tech cards for Prism, my recommendation is Murkmire Grapnel, which said it's the first time anybody's hearing that, but I think that's gonna be the card you want, not some random three or just three random seven power attacks.
Yeah. For the viewers at home who might not know what Murkmire Grapnel is, that is just a zero cost arrow with 4 power. If it has an aim counter, it gets +1, but the text on it that is always active is that damage it would deal can't be prevented. So if Azalea dominates a Murkmire Grapnel for 10 and Prism can't block it all out, all of the ward, all of the spectral shields will attempt to prevent that damage from hitting, and they'll all pop.
Yep, it's a nightmare. All right, so for Riptide, they're also gonna run Rapture likely, uh, but unlike Azalea, Riptide blocks pretty well, and a lot of your traps end up being turned on. Like Tar Pit Trap is crazy value. You could just block 3 on a Herald for 7, and it like denies the on hit, which is just as good as fully blocking it out,
Yeah.
minus the damage that you take. But denying the on hit is big. So one thing to remember is that your trap damage will only trigger against the Herald attacks, not the Angel attacks, because the Angels are allies, and Riptide's ability says attacking hero. Uh, so unlike Azalea, like I said, you block pretty well. You can actually run them out of cards if they don't try to set up those bigger turns like I was talking about earlier. And then, just like Azalea, I think you waste an attack on killing uh, Pierce Reality, and then Murkmire Grapnel is still good in Riptide, just like Azalea, because without the ward, Prism struggles to block 4s and 7s.
Makes sense. Which ranger are you more? Which one would you rather sit down and play against?
I think Azalea. As Prism, I would rather play against Azalea because I
Gotcha.
know that it's just going to be a race, which I'm confident that I can do well into. And then I also have ALS that I can just kind of sit on and wait for them to go pump, pump, pump Azalea ability. And then I go, hold on. This whole turn that you thought that you were going to get a bunch of damage in, you're not. I'm just going to put this out in front of it.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, and it's especially since you're bringing Rapture into either of them, it's not like you can stop them from getting their awesome tar pit trap value or collapsing trap, whichever one. So yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. All right, we'll head into my neck of the woods for a moment. The Rune Blades, historically bane of most illusionists. Although I do think a pretty good amount of that was actually Rosetta Thorn specifically was really good into illusionist. Um, but Vincent and Viserai both have pretty solid stuff going for them in terms of combating Prism. Uh, so starting with Viserai, save you some time. Don't try and do the OTK into Prism because you probably won't be able to race. Like if you're just letting her throw heralds at you, and it's clear you're trying to, you're not running a real weapon. You're running Scepter of Pain, and just trying to stack rune chants. That's never going to work. Don't try it. They have ALS, and they will build, a massive board way too quickly that your rune chant stacking is generally not going to be able to outpace. Um, if you're playing the more uh, like aggressive slash mid range versions of Viserai, you will have a much better time. Um, the old bread and butter play of like Mavrian Skies into Shrill of Skullform into uh, Reaping Blade. Uh, you know, obviously it used to be a Rosetta Thorn, but we make do with what we got. But even if you ignore the fact that Mob Skies gives you an on hit, there is 7 damage, a rune chant from Viserai, and 3 come in there at the end. If Prism is ever trying to keep a board state alive, like you present enough, not huge numbers, but difficult numbers for her to play whack-a-mole to protect a ward state from. Um, what do you usually bring in against Viserai game plan wise?
Viscera is tough because it's a match that I'm gonna run Rapture into. Because if I try to do the flood plan, Viscera oftentimes just has lead the charge, just main board already. So like attacking or trying to set up a board state with auras might just get easily cleared, especially if the Viserai knows what you're trying to do, then they'll just park lead the charge on Arsenal and wait. Um, so I'm just trying to do the Rapture stuff because Viserai has quite a few poppers as well. Um, and it's got the split damage, so it's hard to, like Kevin said, protect my ward state. So I actually think Viserai is probably one of our unfavored to not good matchups.
um, yeah, and that's just historically held true. The split damage makes it particularly challenging. I will say you probably, you have a good enough armor suite and enough 3 blocks that as the Viserai player, you probably don't need to dilute your deck with a bunch of like bad sevens. You have access to a few good ones. Runic Reclamation is a phenomenal card, and I would definitely be on like at least that. Um, it's you could also do, there are Crown of Dominion cash in Viserai aggro builds out there too. Uh, in which case, a card like Wage Gold is a perfectly reasonable inclusion since it's counts as a Runeblade attack when it comes to Mob Skies. It's still a 7 for your popper into Prism, and if you wage and get your gold, then you just turned your next cash in into a free roll again. So a few good options there, but I wouldn't, I don't think I would try and fit any more than 6 in, and that's if you're really trying to be Prism diligent. Um,
Well, you've also got Amplify the Arc Knight that usually run too, right?
True, but that's just a 6.
Uh, that's a
I
six.
I kind
That
of
is
just
a six,
operate
but
on
it
the
works. It works on
axis.
most things.
That's
Yeah.
true. I've been hurt by Herald of Triumph enough that at this point, like 7 is the new 6. The same way that five is the new 6 for KO, 7 is the new 6 for Prism. Just I have different standards for my poppers now. Um, and then as always, as Viserai, if you or any Runeblade, if you fall behind on board state, don't be afraid to like spend creepers, to get that extra action point to swing Reaping Blade and clear an aura. If you go through a game and you don't actually push damage with your creepers, but instead you clear a pair of auras before it dies off to not dealing the arcane, that's fine. That's what it's there for. Um, so don't be shy about using creepers to sort of keep the board in check. Uh, our other Runeblade we have currently is Vincent, of course. Historically, I guess when both of these heroes were originally spoiled, and before everyone got into the nitty gritty with deck building and figured out how these decks played, everyone just like looked at Prism and then looked at Vincent and then just chuckled a little bit because it's like, oh, haha, you're gonna set up 3 angels and then I'm gonna shotgun it with a single rune chant. Um, Turns out Prism players are smarter than that, so generally that is not what happens. Uh, and Alex and I have found the Vincent versus Prism matchup to be pretty close. It's been a minute since we've played it now, but we played quite a few games back when it was still uh, old new Luminaris.
When we were the only ones playing those heroes.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. Uh, but it's tough, right? Like you can, you know, either hero can come out of the gate hot. I would say that matchup is probably pretty draw dependent, like early on, right? For who can sort of establish a foothold and get on the front foot. And it's basically, board state and soul count versus, how big of a life lead can I have? Because as Vin said, you can always push damage, and Prism plays into what you want to do by conveniently starting 8 life lower than you. All you want in this world is to get down to like, oh cool, we're both below 10, but I'm at 9 and you're at 2. Like that's where you want to live. So in order to either keep a Herald Angel Herald hand or pop off on a flood turn, they're gonna need to eat some damage. But
I know I'm playing Rapture to Vincent, and I'm just using 90% of the time I'm using the angels as like just D-reacts because I can't afford to just lose them to a errant rune chant. So I end up like waiting for the rune chants to come through and then flipping them so that uh, I still get the full ward out of them. But then also, while I'm attacking with heralds, all your best attacks they are poppers, and you have a decent amount of poppers. But if you're using 2 poppers to pop my attacks, then what are you going to do on your turn? Probably not a lot, because Vincent struggles to like have consistently good hands.
yeah, it's sometimes you high roll and you're like, haha, this hand has 3 poppers. Let me pop you twice, and I'll still send like a 2 card 11 back at you. And then other times you're like, oh, this hand has a singular attack, and it's my only 6, and I have to choose. Well, do I try and pop and risk getting blown out, or sometimes it doesn't even matter if it's Herald of Triumph, but it's like, well, I guess I'm getting hit this time because I do need to attack you next turn.
Another thing that Kevin and I learned early as Vincent, you want to you want to have 2 attacks in your banner zone, so that if the prison player activates Halo of Illumination to flip one of them, it doesn't just end your turn. If you like play an envelop, play a shadow puppetry, and then go to attack with your 1 attack from banish, they're just going to flip that with the Herald Judgment, and your turn will be over.
Yeah, normally I would hesitate to suggest, oh yeah, no, like put this attack in your arsenal and let it linger there for 4 or 5 turn cycles. But uh, similar to the Mask of the Pouncing Lynx versus Halo of Illumination minigame there's also oh okay, are you going to present me with a window where I can pop Halo of Illumination to grab Herald of Judgment and keep you off of a double gate turn, or just completely eat your turn. I have a vivid memory of playing. I think it was like Putrid Stirrings, Pay a Life. Played Mauve Skies, and then in response to the Mauve Skies, you flipped my 1 attack because I didn't really have anything better to do on that turn cycle, so I tried it, and yeah, so that Herald of Judgment was like in the vicinity of like 18 value, something along those lines. Um, but yeah, that's a big Miller highlight key to the matchup, if you will. Um, Conversely,
Good little
though,
illumination minigame.
Flail is really good. You know, Prism doesn't want to block that. Prism doesn't want to spend a whole card to stop you from having a rune chant. So not always true, but more often than not it
Oftentimes,
hits.
it's just footsteps.
Yeah, but
Oftentimes, I'll just pay for some of the rune chants and then use a floating to block footsteps. But if you can make the rune chants an awkward number where I have to pitch an extra card just to footsteps, then definitely more awkward that way.
yeah, like normally, when you're Viscera and you're like, oh, I'm gonna swing in with 3 rune chants and this attack, you get a little sad because you're like, well, this is cleanly blocked by a blue, and then you can block the attack however you want. But if you have 3 rune chants and go mob skies into any 3 cost gate with go again into flail, then suddenly one of those points uh, is connecting, not convenient for them to block out. And then Vincent Phantom Banshee is a decent 7 if you're really struggling and you feel like you could use some more real poppers into that deck. Perfectly serviceable attack. I don't know if it makes enough of a difference on average to be worth the total deck slots because there's not a ton of other matchups where you want it, but it is an option. And then Vincent can also run Runic Reclamation, so that's probably your one step down 7 power popper. Although now that I say that, there is a shadow one that's a 2 block from Original Monarch that
Lunartide Plunder Run.
that's it. Lunartide Plunderer uh, is a 3 for 7 that. So downside is it's 2 block. The upside is it has an on hit that like eats their soul. So if you need to dig deep for some 7s to pop a prism, that's probably your one of your top 3 options.
All the homies love Poppin' Prism.
Yeah. Um,
All right, on to the Warriors. So, with the exception of Bolton, it's less of hero specific and more weapon specific. So Dorinthia obviously being able to run all of the different weapons, Dawnblade, Decimator Axe, or a dual wield. Um, Prism is going to have to run Vestige into you because they don't know which weapon you're going to be using, so we have to hedge that it's Decimator. Because if we try to just play the Heralds into the Decimator deck, it's not going to be good because you're just going to be able to block us out with Steelblade Shunts and uh, the like. Now, if it is Dawnblade, um, just know that Soul Shield and flipping the Angels from Figment to Ward side are the only reaction speed defense that Prism has. So I haven't seen a list that is running Sig Blows or Oasis or Fate Proceedings or anything like that.
Same.
So, yeah. So for Dawnblade, block the first Herald at minimum. Uh, if you don't have like a good offensive turn, you just block both of them. You've got the armor and the 3 blocks to do that. And then once you get a counter or two, because Prism does have cards that don't block, you can start to pressure her with the counters, and it can get out of hand for Prism. Um, so then the Decimator axe is you're gonna block all of her heralds. The number one priority to kill is ALS because you have to, and then Pierce Reality. As strange as it sounds, we've talked about it already. As long as you block her heralds, she's gonna struggle to get figments out of the deck, with the exception of Soul Food, which I know that some prisms are running now, specifically for this issue of, oh, we're getting towards the end of the game and I've got all these figments still left in my deck. Uh, but killing Pierce Reality lets you continue to block her 5s, 6s, and 7s instead of her 7s, 8s, and 9s. They Other than that, you can
Small but
just
important
block
difference.
a lot. Yeah, it's significant. The only reason I was able to win my Pro Tour match against the Decimator Doriax is because I was able to stick to Pierce Reality. Um, which
Stick
then
two
turned,
of them. Jeez.
yeah. So I was able to like send the only thing left in my deck were blue attacks, but they were still coming in for 9. So
Them's
uh,
guardian numbers.
yeah, turns out I do like 2 for 9s with Go again. Yeah.
Pretty
And
good.
then you've got the dual wield, the hatchets or the sabers. They're in terms of Prism, they're basically the same.
But what about all the
Um,
other combinations that are possible, right? What if they're on Parry Blade? What if they're on one hatchet and one hot streak? What about all the combinations? They just
C dual wield. Are you running 2 weapons? All right, refer to this game plan. So it's the same as above, as the stuff that we've just talked about. Clear, pierce, block the first herald. Um, Time Snap's not the worst because you've got the 2 weapons. Um, but I've also been able to just kill Prism before they found the ALS flood turn. Sometimes, as much shuffling as happens, sometimes it just gets constantly shuffled to the bottom. Um, they have to be able to find all their pieces, and then also take a turn of your damage to then like play out their like flood turn. So if you can get them to 10-ish before they find the pieces, then you're in a good spot.
all right.
So
Makes sense. So what
that's
about the
that's all
the
the different
oddball then?
weapons. Yes, Bolton, Prism's nightmare. uh, we're gonna run Rapture because Bolton has action point shenanigans with Lumen Ascension and Spirit of Arena. All of Prism's cards, with exception to Soul Shield, block for 2, or their attack actions, which versus Bolton, they block for 2. So, uh, in Bolton, you just naturally have 7 power attacks that you're okay running,
Yeah,
like your
Celestial
Celestial
Cataclysm and Bolting Blade?
Bolting Blade.
Bolting Blade.
Yeah, like you're not siding in bad cards that you never want to play just to be poppers. They're totally reasonable if you get to play them. There's still a ton of damage. And then you've also got a lot of armor that still just allows you to block the heralds. So if you can make it difficult for Prism to hit you and not get figments out. Meanwhile, uh, I think the one thing that you want to it's another match where you have to keep an eye on Halo of Illumination. And if they haven't used it yet, if you're going to play via the Vanguard, you have to charge twice minimum. Because if you only charge once, they are going to go get the Figment of Triumph and reduce the power of your attacks by 1, which would then take away Go again and stall your turn out. But as long as you are charging twice with via the Vanguard, uh, they cannot do that.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I guess
Yeah.
I was aware that that was a thing because there's a few other cards with that type of effect, but yeah, I hadn't thought about it from the Halo of Illumination standpoint.
Yeah. Bolton blocks well enough and is aggressive enough and makes it hard for Prism to block that it's just a nightmare all
The
around
perfect
for
storm of
Prism.
a bad matchup.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, on the perfect storm of a good matchup, last but not least, the lone wizard in CC, Kano.
Yeah. So the Prism is going to run Rapture because it lets them save 2 resources on flipping angels as well as is just Ward 1 whenever they want it. So I think Kano's plan should be put your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye. It's a tough matchup for Kano for sure. But for real, I think you probably have to block quite a bit and try to kill them as quickly as possible. I think that may be your only out. You should definitely play Waning Moon though, because making it awkward, like when to flip and get Ward, and you respond with Waning Moon, so they have to now pitch cards to save the ward to block your other spell. But
Sounds like
Prism
a
does
coin
start at
flip to
30.
me. I don't know.
Prism does start at 32, so she's already in kill range if you just like find the combo super quick before she can get any angels out. But
Yeah,
once Prism gets rolling, it's gonna be tough.
yeah, it definitely just seems like okay, maybe Kano can steal a win in the first like 2 turn cycles if something just works out and is on the top of the deck. But yeah, once there starts being a ward state in play, it's just so difficult for them to fight through. And then
Yeah.
I also realized I don't know how it didn't make it into my notes because I mean the card is uh, a a meme, albeit a very powerful, very narrow meme. But if you're looking to mess with some angels, uh, there's a card called Slay. It's a
Yes,
shadow
Queen.
instant. Yes. It is a red instant, 0 cost, shadow instant. So Leviah or Vincent can play it, and it just simply says destroy target angel ally. Uh, I wish it said destroy target angel ally or Figment, but beggars can't be choosers, I guess. Um, but no, but Slay is like it's not a card that you should put 3 of in your sideboard if you're like I'm having trouble with this. I need something really potent to counter Prism. Uh, but it is sort of it's pretty potent as a one of that you're like, oh, I came across this before their flood turn. I will park this in Arsenal and simply wait. Because you know what makes that ALS flood turn look really bad is killing Soraya before you can draw the cards from triggering her, right? Like it's it is arguably the most narrow card in Flesh and Blood, but in the right moment, it can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah. And as Leviathan, if you end up running that card, you don't even have to roll Scab Skins. You could just kill both ALS and Soraya without even rolling.
The pinnacle of value of reaction
Yeah.
points. Turns out instants can be good. See Artivore.
And, all right. That pretty much wraps it up. So now Prism will never win another game again. Good thing Rhea is swapping to Enigma.
Yeah, it's self-preservation, honestly. Just, she knew we were gonna give away all the secrets tonight. Tell everybody how to do it. So gotta swap to the next big thing and break that before anybody else.
If you're seeing this, that means that she hasn't been able to delete the VOD before we upload it. So
Yes, yes. I am an agent of the Demonastery. I would like to tell everybody how to defeat the Light Illusionist. They made me do it. If you're listening to this and not watching, I just pointed to 2 large posters of Viscera and Chain. Uh,
yeah,
all right.
context is good.
Yeah, context is good. Uh, but that's it. We've hit the rambly point. We're going to ramp up. Thanks for hanging out. Hope this was helpful and amusing enough.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, whatever. Later.
All the stuff. Push the buttons. See ya.